ready, set, go. Second one started. So
Uh,
this 100. By the way, so continuing for the last conversation, this is 100% one of my edges, which I too am not a strong advocate for stats, but I'm learning to be open-minded because all of the super successful traders that I know, they're all stats driven. But what I really love and admire is behavior analysis. So I'm like ideally I look at all the runners for the past week, 2 week, and I specifically in a perfect world I want to write down that hey, this the top happened because of a debt after a debt candle, or it started squeezing because of a debt candle, or the top happened because there was two liquidity event. The top happened at 9:45 as opposed to 9:30. The top happened at 11:30. Like all of these things I want to track, and for sure it's just algos that interchange within a cycle. All these things. This is my opinion. This would be a super duper 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 nice. Awesome. Uh, act, okay, let's go over we in 5 6 minutes. Like the past. Have you looked at the past 5 6 charts preparing for the next this week?
for this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just pull it up real quick.
If you don't mind posting the charts on Discord, and if you tell
Okay.
me the name, I'll follow too.
So like the big movers.
Like whatever you're looking to analyze, because the goal of this is we're trying to better ourselves. So starting Monday and this whole week, like what are the behaviors that from the previous runners that we could take into the next week? So big runners,
Yes.
big gap ups.
So one of the big runners last week was UCAR. So yeah, UCAR Chinese play. Look week off of June 1st, right? And once it kind of turned the corner, it turned into it just really started going, and yeah, it closed close to its highs on day one, and then on day two we had almost like a perfect filled breakout over the highs, and I think what was interesting about this one was like off the open, it looked pretty stuffy. It had that failed breakout over VWAP and like the 931 high. And I think the reclaim probably propped a bunch of shorts. But then I think what was really interesting with this one was like once it did the failed breakout over the high, it never really bounced. And like I think that's really interesting because like the prop off the morning was pretty vicious.
Yes.
And I personally thought that VWAP would hold. I even like took a long there, and I quickly cut it, right? Because but like it was a bit frustrating because like I did get the pre-market high short. I covered it into VWAP thinking that we'd get a bit of a bounce, switch long, and then it just never came back. So
Hmm. I would have done the
I
same
do
thing.
think,
I would have done the same thing.
yeah, um, but yeah, I do think it's this one's a little bit of anomaly
Yes.
because uh, normally I really do think it would have bounced and even tested that high again. Because like that morning, like that walk down from pre-market highs and then that trap off the open, like I would have thought there'd be a lot more shorts trapped, and they would put the shorts in a spin cycle all day. So,
So
yeah, that was an interesting one.
I'll quickly mention that some of the guys that I know that are stock traders, I don't know if they're okay with me sharing this. I think they are. I'm very open with sharing almost everything, most of the time. Long story short, this is a day two gapper based on stock traders, and day two gapper has for whatever reason, given the gap up, given the percent move, and it's a day two move, they knew that it was a high probability short trade.
Uh
So
huh.
some of the really big traders that I know took the short, and they had a high confidence. They played it. But I think for me, I think it's the way how this price action is the behavior. I think it was a relatively anomaly too. If because of how much it stayed below Viva, it stayed
Yeah.
for like an hour or like 30 minutes. I guess it looks like, and then it went higher, and then a few times it like, oh, I'm gonna bounce up from Viva, and then it just rejected below. Yeah, it's
So does this one have like a fundamental reason why it faded day two a lot harder than it was expected to on a technical level?
no, it was based on stats. So there's some guys, including Short Bear, including a few other people. Um, they are very much stat traders. They're very good at that. And for them, this was a day two mover,
Uh
and
huh.
this is a stats. I'm not a super stats guy, but I try to stay away from it, just for the fun.
Yeah.
But they do, they have the pythons and things that like goes and
Yeah, they
presents.
crunch a lot of data at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to how us discretionary traders do, but we have maybe, and I'm biased, but maybe we have a bit better pulse if we're not being lazy. Like if we look at how did it fade, when did it fade, like similar concepts and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move from this. What other names do you
I think that was probably the trickiest one of the week. And then the trade of the week for me was probably MMV. MMV did a really big gap up.
have? Wait. The other thing you should
Um,
see, your VLDS. The other thing I always try to pay attention is to what time it faded. So this faded at 10:15. VLDS is the other one, and I think it, yeah, around 10:30, which is really weird. Okay, that one kind of fade. I mean, anyway, never mind. Ignore that one. You said MMVS,
MMV.
MMV. Okay. See, that's for me. It's so tough though because some of them push to 10. Uh, some of these traders they have from opening price to how much it pushes and how often it pushes. So they have stats on that, and I have a gap stats for that too. I think they may take it from us, but it usually the gap stats
Yeah.
usually says how much high does it push until it fades on average, and then they just look at a few percent. So how would you trade
Right.
MMV? Because this is for me this is a tough action, price action.
Yeah. So with this one, the core idea is that the larger the gap, the more likely it is to close red.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I stayed fairly patient on this one, and once it kind of started putting in uh, topping action close to four, and it rejected, put in that double top, I was fairly confident that this was it. Went in short, and then I pyramided in at 310ish as it popped back up to VWAP, and it rejected pretty hard. I knew it was onto the right track. Added more, and then we had a nice crack towards end of day, and yeah, pretty much covered at two. So yeah, this one it's pretty straightforward. Very large gap up. Most likely, it's going to be unsustainable. Wait for the topping action, uh, and then once it fails to break out, hit the short, and then try to pyramid in. Right, the larger the range, the easier it is to pyramid in. So,
You
but yeah,
also
it did have some pretty funky price action though.
I have some questions, but use anchored VWAP because it kissed anchored VWAP and rejected. The second time that I
Oh,
had
very
big push,
nice.
it just kissed it. I'll send you a screenshot right now. It does that often. The red line is there. Yo, so the other question I have is, how did you, how do you avoid like 9:30, 9:35? Because that 9:30 candle looks very appealing. Because that's like on a big volume, and it's like okay, well, it's heavy.
So yeah, so my general rule is off the open on something that has very very high range, like range that's very anomalous, is that I know that the way that the stock's going to set up, it's going to usually give a very like typically there's going to be like a very extended room to enter, right? So like when this thing started to kind of go sideways at uh 10 and then 10 all the way to like 10:15, like that was a lot more like easy to recognize in the sense that like it was very clear shelving, there hadn't been a big drop, it's just hovering over the pre-market high, right? It's like usually like the larger the gap, the more obvious the entry is going to be when it actually shows up. You just have to kind of let it form. So like my goal is to not jump the gun on entries when the range is this big. So like I do remember taking a very very small short right off the open as it failed to break out over the pre-market high, but like I immediately covered because I know that the better entry is going to be, it's going to come a little bit later on and it's going to come in the form of a shelf. So like uh 10, 10, 15, I started to take a little bit more size, but then I knew that the best case scenario would be a failed breakout at 4. And yeah, it wasn't clean, but like when that popped up and I saw the rejection, I got in pretty quick. I was pretty confident that this was it, you know?
What was your risk?
So I would have been risking 430.
And you determined that by the high of the day subtract VWAP um,
Yeah.
divided by 2
And
point.
then divide by 2, yeah. Yeah.
How do you? Why? How did you determine? Is that just from experience, or is that
The divide by 2?
like the stock? Because obviously it's not based on price action. Is it something you back tested, or is it intuition?
I haven't back tested it, but I know that like the next leg of the move, right? Like I know that the best failed breakouts will not extend over the entire width of the last channel, right? So like I know that once it kind of starts to get over to the higher part of the channel, it's probably gonna uh, extend over into the next leg, so I avoid.
Can you repeat? It makes sense, but that's a really cool thing that I something I learned, and it makes sense. But could you rephrase that?
I know that like a true failed breakout will not extend over the width of the last channel. So once it kind of extends a little bit higher than like half of the width of the previous channel, I kind of know that it's probably just the next leg rather than a failed breakout.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But I guess okay. Um, I suppose yeah, that does make a lot of sense from a logical stance. What's the objection that one would have to that? I don't know. It's a very cool logic. I like it. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that it enables you to top like so my view is top tipping isn't good, but do you find that sometimes it catches you off guard, or is it often? I guess it gives you wide enough stuff so that you're not like just
Yeah,
buying weird stuff. Okay, that makes sense.
yeah, and yeah, and typically I want to see the shelf to add anyways. So just because I see something go over the high day doesn't mean I'm going to go short. I'm actually going to wait for it to show a little bit of sideways action. I just don't want the sideways action to happen too high because I know then shorts are really bent.
Okay, cool, awesome. Do you have to go?
Yeah.
Okay, good. It was this was a very good talk. I appreciate it. Thank you. We should do it more often, and hopefully it was useful. Um, I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for doing this, and I think hopefully if we do it consistently, we'll post it. The other guys in the room will jump on too, and uh, it's very lucky because we all trade small cap, but actually, believe it or not, like I have I'm lucky enough to know that how kind of everybody trades because I like all you guys and also like I'm watching. Most of us actually trade completely different. One of us are completely filing based, one of us is completely behavior based, one person is completely shifted to stack based. So it's gonna be fun when we the more we interact. So awesome. I appreciate you, Achish.
All right. Yeah, I gotta run, bro.
I gotta have a wonderful day.
All right, you too.
Take care of yourself.
Assalamualaikum.
Okay, amigos. So this was a quick video. If you guys made it so far this far, that means you liked it. Click subscribe. Um, I love learning new stuff, and it feels good. So yeah, um, part of me wants to do a place where I'm like learning and picking other traders' mindset and trying to dig deeper. And the other part's like, well, I don't know if I could commit to that, but hopefully it was enjoyable for you guys as much as it was for me. And we definitely need to do that more often. We are lucky and blessed to have quite a few successful traders in the small prop firm. We only have 6, 7 traders. Most of them have successfully made 7 figures plus per year basis. And if you know anybody that's outside of USA that is with TZ or that's was a really good trader struggling, shoot me a message on Afghanrebel on Twitter. And yeah, have a wonderful and a happy weekend. Take care, guys.